Hi, I hope you had having a great weekend. The purpose of this presentation is to provide just a little summary in areas of the topic, uh, program assessment of learning outcomes based on the results of the IRAT. Great job this week to all of you. And I want to just also provide just a little preview of what's to come in the next 2 weeks as we wrap up this unit. But just a little bit about student learning outcomes. You know, that's the focus of our unit. And we're talking about assessing student learning at the program outcome level. You know, of course, generating data in this area supports continuous improvement of your program, and it provides the necessary documentation for institutional effectiveness as well. Now, now, measures that are very common to institutional effectiveness and program effectiveness are graduation rates, retention, job placement, student services, uh, types of types of support that we provide students, administrative services, physical infrastructure. And what we want to talk about is how are we measuring student learning and the accomplishment of the program outcomes. And so oftentimes accreditation agencies will actually be looking for both. You know, what kind of data are you collecting and analyzing to improve your program effectiveness? And then what kind of data are you collecting and analyzing to improve student learning? So what do we mean when we say assessment of learning? Many of you mentioned that the terminology can be confusing, and you're absolutely right, because there are different ways to say things, and it's important to understand the terminology at your college. Just in general, assessment of learning involves informed judgments about the achievement of the intended learning outcomes. So it's going to be based on evidence. You want those assessments to be valid, reliable, and fair. And you want the assessments to be built into the plan for teaching. The other important element of the assessment of learning is that we're using data to help us continuously improve teaching and learning. You may be wondering why we bother with the assessment of program outcomes. As we read in the articles, accreditation is the biggest driver. Other important benefits, though, for having a really good program assessment plan has to do with our students. By assessing program outcomes and providing that feedback to our students, we are giving them important feedback about the skills that they'll need on the job, and it will add value to their education. An assessment program will also allow colleges to improve teaching and learning, which supports their overall mission. And finally, an assessment program will give employers the assurance that our graduates have the knowledge and the skills that they need for their job. So there's lots of really good reasons to have a program assessment plan other than but but not to negate the importance of the accreditation expectations. Let's look at some of the concepts emphasized in the articles that you read and reinforced through the IRAT and the TRAT process. And thanks so much for your participation. It's a great way to kind of get connected with the content, and it's all part of the learning. Let's look at two concepts that were really confusing people on the IRAT and the TRAT, and that has to do with direct and indirect measures of learning. And what's happening here in this arena is that there's increased accountability for direct measures of student learning versus indirect measures. Now, indirect measures were perceived as the focus for accountability in the past. Kind of the new thinking is that indirect measures complement direct measures, but direct measures are the most important. So let's look at some examples of direct measures. Performance assessments with rubrics, portfolios, artifacts, performances, excuse me, and outcome referenced tests. There were a couple examples of performance measures in the IRAT and the TRAT, and they were an internship and a service learning project. So it's something that the student is doing. You could say both of those were examples of performances, but a direct measure, you're directly measuring learning. In the indirect category, it's things that are giving us information about what the students are saying about what they're learning, their inferences for why achievement might be high or might be low. Some of the examples that we talked about in the IRAT and the TRAT were the idea survey. Great information, but that's the student's perception of what they've learned. Noel Levitz, again, another student satisfaction survey. Graduate surveys, again, student perception. Course feedback surveys, again, student perception. The course completion rates, employer information, employer surveys, placement statistics, enrollment, retention rates, all of those can give you inferences about what might be happening, and certainly are important aspects to look at. But when you're looking at directly measuring program outcomes, you want to look at measurements that are going to tell you, are the students learning? How well are they learning? Are they learning more? And that is going to help you, that's going to help inform your curriculum decisions better than anything else. There are a lot of challenges in implementing an assessment program. For the most part, we're given program outcomes that we need to then make sense of, and then develop direct measures of student learning that are going to be aligned with those outcomes. And many of you mentioned another challenge, and that is how do we involve faculty? And faculty play a critical role in the program assessment process, and so their involvement is key. And certainly figuring out how to collect data is also an important challenge. But the biggest challenge, and the one that where assessment plans fail, is that they're not using the data to improve student learning and teaching. So they put this big plan together and they figure out these direct measures, and they even collect the data, but the reason you're doing all of this is to improve teaching and learning. And in other words, in assessment language, that's called closing the loop, is when at the end of the day, you actually sit down and look at that data, and then you think about what it's telling you, and if there are opportunities to improve the curriculum to enhance student learning. In our academic management course, you are going to be putting together a SWOT that's focusing on improving program efficiency and effectiveness related to student learning and faculty development. So what kind of data do you want to collect for your SWOT on student learning related to program outcomes? You will want to look for direct measures of student learning. And in some of the IRAT questions, I threw in some indirect measures, and I was looking for you to distinguish between the two, because not that graduation rates and idea survey information isn't important, but that's an indirect measure. And so what you want to do is you want to look for direct measures of learning. When you're looking at, how do I improve student learning in my program? The other tool that can be of benefit to you is mapping your curriculum. So let's look at that. There are all kinds of different ways that you can map your curriculum. In the example in the IRAT, uh, was looking at mapping program outcome assessments with the program outcomes. And so you can kind of see, it gives you a big picture as to how well the assessments might be addressing the outcomes. and you raised some really great questions in your reflection on this in terms of what it might mean. Um, and in some of the things that were raised, looking at program outcome number 3, 7, and 8, you were wondering, it looks like only one of the assessments address those outcomes versus in other areas the outcomes are addressed by multiple assessments. So the question is that good? Is it not good? Those are questions that would come up as you were looking at this map with your faculty. And all kinds of other things like what kind of calibration is taking place, if there are multiple assessors. So there's lots of things that you might see here that would raise questions and that you could use to improve the curriculum. Here's an example of another way to map the curriculum. You might want to look at the program outcomes in relationship to the courses in the program. In this example, the highlighted boxes with bold X's indicate where the outcome is comprehensively assessed, and the non-highlighted box with the X indicates where the outcome is introduced or practiced. So this might give you some information that when coupled with student performance on the assessments would help you make some decisions. As you're looking at the strengths and weaknesses of your program level assessment plan, you also want to think about your faculty. What kind of faculty involvement is there right now in the plan? And then where is your faculty in terms of skill level as it relates to understanding what program assessment means, uh, as it relates to implementing these direct measures of student learning? Is there a faculty development opportunity or plan that you need to put into place to help improve your program assessment plan? So in summary, when you are working to apply this content to your program area and you're looking at, what data should I be examining to identify strengths and weaknesses regarding student learning, and specifically your program assessment plan, you will want to look at uh, the types of assessments that you're using uh, to determine whether those program outcomes are being met, whether learning is taking place. And then you'll want to, if you have data related to those outcomes, you would want to look at that. Uh, what I'm suggesting is that you think about, mapping your curriculum in some way. I've given you a couple of examples that you might utilize, and then look at that map and see what kind of strengths and weaknesses you see there. And then think about your faculty, the skills and the involvement that they presently have, and what are strengths and weaknesses there. Well, great job with week 1 in the student learning unit. Really appreciate the hard work. And we're going to move on to just kind of review what happened in week 1. I mean, we're focusing on reading and then kind of applying what you were reading, or testing what you were reading uh, using the IRAT, all, like I said, part of the learning. The TRAT discussion, I think I need to think about this a little bit more and give you a little bit more time, because that's really where I was hoping you would talk about some of the challenges that you had with the questions, and that there'd be some dialogue there, and as a result, then improve the performance in the on the exam. So I think maybe a little bit more time would help you in that regard. As we move into week 2, uh, what we're going to be focusing on are a number of things. I will post the team case study on Sunday, and then you'll have by midnight on Wednesday to post your team answer. And there will be a place in the it'll probably be called Respond to Margaret, because you're going to be helping Margaret out again. Uh, there'll be a place for your team to respond. But again, conduct your discussions in that TRAT case study area, so the same area that you were working in before, working in last week. And then after you post your answer, then as a team, individually, you'll want to look at what other people have done, and then as a team, I want you to choose the best response and why. And there will be a WebEx this week, so you want to participate in that or to listen to the recording, because um, an expert within your system is going to talk about program level assessment and institutional effectiveness. And at the end of the week, I'm going to give you an opportunity to give each other feedback on how you're working as a team. So look for that survey link at the end of the week. And then you want to look back at the learning plan, because there's a description of the curriculum map activity, and then there's an area for you to post your reflections on that. So it's all kind of working on that SWOT that we have been talking about related to student learning now, and then doing some work in that regard with your program, so applying what we've been talking about, and then reflecting on that and sharing your reflections with your team. And so that will be a good amount of activity that we'll have here in week 2. Okay, in week 3, the extension week, that would be actually a good time to finish up your reflections. There are 2 other discussion boards in this unit. One titled Learning Assessment of Program Outcomes, and that's where you're going to post your reflections about the curriculum map and the SWOT work that you've done. And then the strengths related to teamwork. You're really not going to be able to post that reflection until you get the summary from me on the feedback that your fellow team members have provided. So that you won't get that until next weekend or the beginning of next week or the beginning of this 3rd week. And then add to the personal learning template and the SWOT analysis template. So those are things that you can wrap up in week 3. We started the unit by giving you this roadmap in terms of the minimal must-dos. So in week 1, my expectation was that you take the IRAT, because that's all part of the learning, and then participate in the TRAT discussions. And like I said, I'm hoping that we can have a little bit more time for some richer discussions in our next unit. Now in this week, the 2 minimal must-dos are to participate in that team learning, student learning team case study, and there are some deadlines associated with that, and then to participate in the peer teamwork feedback. So there'll be a survey link on Friday for that. And then on week number 2 or 3, depending on where you want where you have the time to do this, to finish that work on the curriculum map and share your reflection, and then remember, go back to your learning plan to see the steps for that, and to reflect on the feedback that I will compile for you on what your team members have provided in terms of feedback, in terms of your participation in the team. So those are the 6 minimal must-dos, the two focuses for this week, the case study, and then the peer survey. Thanks again for a great week 1. It's been really fun working with you, and I appreciate the email messages and opportunities to work with you individually, as well as to get a sense of how things are going with your learning regarding this concept. So onward to week 2. Hope you have a good one. Bye.